What is up?
Welcome in to the Fantasy Football Lab. I'm Arlen. This is Nate. How you doing, Nate?
Obviously, well prepared for these shows and recording these episodes. I didn't even have the screen up and knew we were recording yet. So what's up, everybody? Super stoked to get into the first weekend of the season as we're jumping in. But really important today, we want to make sure that you are setting your lineups correctly. So let's talk through that.
Yeah, our mind has been so much on draft strategies, and we've talked about it a lot here. And then with your friends, your league mates, talking about different pieces leading up to the draft, listening to tons of different information, reading tons of different articles because you do your research. But then the season starts, and there's some things that we just need to remind ourselves. The basic stuff that every year catches us in the beginning, no matter how long you've been doing fantasy, you might be caught with some of these. So first and foremost, I want to say thank you, because we're trugging along here. We got 112. I think last time we were recording, it was like 105. Yep, on the road to 150. So I appreciate everybody new and who's been here for a minute, listening to us and hitting that subscribe. I know it gives us a lot of motivation. But either way, this is a podcast that Nate and I, we are having conversations, and we were talking fantasy football for years. And then one day we just hit record, and that's really all this one is.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we're glad to have other people join into the conversation as well, because Arlen and I can only take so much of each other. And so love it that people have been engaging recently. We've got some great conversations happening in the chat. So as you jump in, in the comment section. So as you are watching, feel free to jump in and let us know. People have not been shy about how wrong they think we are. And we are excited to chat with those folks.
Yeah, we are still 100% of all the comments that have been left, we respond to. So we, during the season, we might do some episodes about certain players. We have one coming out this week of just some good stashes. We like this type of stuff the most, though, just how to either, I guess, strategy during the season, drafts, history of fantasy football, just that extra sicko fantasy football love conversations that we were having anyways. And that's what we focus on for the most part, but we kind of are fluid throughout the year. Off season, more dynasty stuff. And then interesting league types. We've got a few different leagues, like vampire leagues. Tried a relegation, never worked. Chopped. We had that one on our features, our requests for Sleeper, and they brought that in the same week because they saw it and they go, I am sorry, Arlen and Nate. We'll get right on that. And we'll develop it. And of course, within a few days, they were able to develop that whole thing. So it must have not been pre-planned. All right, let's get into this episode. Tips and reminders, tips and tricks for the season. Some things that you should remember.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Lab.
I'll kick us off with the first one. I mentioned at the end of the last episode as a teaser for this one, but your flex position. Your flex position is not only for flexibility of what player type position that you put into that, but it's also your most flexible for that reason, meaning you should not use it for your third favorite running back or wide receiver. You should be using it for the player that plays the latest. Take a look at your lineup. Don't forget Superflex to swap those quarterbacks if one plays a little later. You should use Flex and Superflex for whatever player without changing your roster. Don't jeopardize it, but put somebody who plays the latest there in case something goes wrong. Because if you're in a Superflex and you have two quarterbacks and a 14-teamer like Nate and I are doing this year, there's probably no quarterback backup if for some reason something happens to your other quarterback and you had put the wrong person in the flex, and now you got an empty spot. So keep that in mind. That's probably one of the biggest ones that get me at some point every year, the more leagues I'm in.
Yeah, I don't know how many leagues you're doing this year. I'm all the way up to 8 leagues this year, and it's a little bit tougher to keep track of as we're going along. So yeah, great call out to remember you're checking all that stuff. For me, as we're taking a look at this, as you're looking at your flexes, one thing that I would call out is make sure you're using the features that are available to you through your app. So Sleeper, as you're thinking through those flexes, allows for you to set a backup player and backup starter if you need to, in case you have an injury or a potential injury for someone. And a lot of times when that happens, we try to get really cute. This guy looks like he's questionable. I'm going to go find someone that's not the stud that I wanted to start and put them in just because there's injury risk. So now that Sleeper allows you to have a backup starter, make sure that you're setting that before the weekend starts and know what the rules are for that. Absolutely.
I like that one that you called out, and I want to pause for a second just on like a settings perspective or a settings preference, because I was going through and I wasn't sure what we had usually done, and I think in a couple of leagues I set this wrong, and I'm fine with changing it if I change it before the first game. I set it so there's an option in that, which I do love that feature, to say that player must start, I think, after or before or something like that. I want to, but there's an option to be able to say like where it doesn't line up, where if your player is out and somebody played earlier, they'll throw it in still, but that player's locked and they can't be used. So I kind of like that, and I think I stopped it from happening in a couple leagues. And I think if you're willing to give up that player and say like, yeah, I'll start this player he plays Thursday, and if my person on Sunday, and he's on my bench, if my person on Sunday is actually out, then I'll have him go in. But I don't know if that takes away from like the fantasy gambles that we.
Yeah, I think that was the discussion.
Fantasy.
Yeah, that was the part of the discussion we had last year when we were talking about this exact setting. We had a situation where I thought like, man, I want my Thursday player to replace whoever it is.
Yeah.
And that was part of it. I think we were being old heads about it and said like, no, man, that's a part of the risk of having injured players. You know, this is really to save you the trouble from all of those games when we're all busy on Sundays, not to like be able to get an extra advantage if you have a player that goes off on Thursday.
Yeah.
That you're not sure where to fit in. So there's a lot of pros and cons to that.
People's thoughts are on that one. If you have a preference, or if your league does it, can't remember what we actually settled on last year, but I have a couple. I think maybe I'll split the leagues and see which people like more. But yeah, what's your next one? You said you were about to start another one before I cut you off.
Was I? Yes. The other thing too is like, no, yeah, just jump right in. That kind of leans into this next one here, and that's around your IR strategy, right? As you're moving around your players, you're messing around with who's injured, who's hurt, who might be hurt. Know what the rules are in your particular league, in your league settings. Know that if you have doubtful players, maybe suspended players in some formats, you can't put a suspended player in IR. Know what those are, and then use them as a stash with a stash potential. You might be able to have a built-in extra spot. A lot of us do that during the draft, or we might towards the end, or maybe depend on who it is, use some of our middle to late draft picks for an IR player, knowing that immediately after the draft is over, we can move them into that IR spot and go pick up a few folks.
And mix in shares.
Yeah, I've got some Mixon, I've got some Addison, I've got some Rashee Rice. And, initially I was doing that with Chris Godwin, but then they decided to take him off the list. So now he's kind of taking up a spot and I need to give up.
What?
Don't worry about it.
Okay.
In my Yahoo league, I think I had him in my IR spot and I did drop him because now he's doubtful, but they don't allow for a doubtful in that IR location.
That's the number one thing I recommend changing is, doubtful. That should be, I get the argument against suspension. I like everything turned on for IR, just whatever. You can't use the player, throw them in. But doubtful needs to be there. So often they're going to go. We've talked about this before, so I don't want to harp on it too much. But this kind of goes with the IR strategy that you were just talking about, and that's like the strategic bench cycling. So check your settings in your league and see if you're allowed to drop players after they've played. That's a big preference between people in different leagues. And the standard classic is once they play, they're locked. What I like is it just a little bit more free reign, and it encourages more activity where people are making moves throughout the weekend and they're kind of on and paying attention to it more. But the strategy, if your league allows it and you're thinking about a couple different players to stash, you can stash some handcuff or something, or you can stash some player that, especially in the earlier weeks of the season where we don't know everything yet and we were wrong about some people that they might break out, stash them early and throw them on the end of your bench. But look at what other players are out there and what times they play. So if you're grabbing a running back that is a backup that plays on Friday, let's say, throw them on, and then nothing happened. The starters in front of that person are fine. Drop them, pick up the next player, and then try to do it based on the time. So you've got 3 or 4 extra spots on your bench just by rotating the few. And then by the time waivers are going, you might have a gem because you picked up someone's backup and that person got injured, and now you're good to go. And you saved yourself a lot of preferably fab that you use.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's a good call. It's already playing in my favor right now, as I have this strategy of grabbing backups and handcuffs during the draft that aren't mine, because I've been already getting trade requests for Benson in some leagues, Charbonnet in others. Actually, those are both in the same league where I'm getting trade requests for those.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, I work those trades out before this posts. Otherwise, they may second think it. But that will really play in your favor for sure. I apologize. I was a little distracted, Arlen, because as we're both sitting here on this recording, I got a trade notification in our Dynasty League.
That went through?
That went through.
Am
Mike
I
Evans trade alert. Nope, neither of us are participating in this trade.
Weird. All right,
I know.
let's see.
Super awkward.
All right, 2-way trade. We got Mike Evans, Giddens, second and third. Eli won.
Yep.
Eli won that one. So yes, just to say it again, Eli, who we said one, got Mike Evans. The other person got DJ Giddens, a 2028 third and a 2027 second. All right, woof.
Every team in this league is just trying to keep up with you, man.
I do like my team.
Yeah.
I
will say he won that trade, but I've got a lot of thoughts on it, but that's not what this show is about.
All right. Well, I'm going to hit the next two and you can hit the last one here because the next two kind of are paired together here. Being proactive on the waiver wire early with your fab. So if you don't use fab, again, that's the preferred by us. I think it's the PPR of waivers. And when I say that, it's no one does standard anymore. And if you're in standard, it's because it was an old league. And if you use the other typo as a ranking or priority, then you're in an old league. So be proactive. Don't be afraid to spend a lot of your fab early. I'm notorious for just spending too much fab. Probably I'm too far over in the beginning, but the fact is, not only do you get to use those players for longer, but they on average score more points per game if they're picked up off the waivers, and they're like the people that are picked up, the top people of the waiver wire week in the first 2 weeks, sometimes 3. They're going to have a higher points per game for the rest of the season than so not only do they have a more time to give you those points, but they have a higher points per game. And the reason is simple. It's that the same thing as I was talking about before, is you just, when you're cycling through and trying to pick some people, rookies or players that are veterans on new teams, or players who are veterans with new offensive coordinators, coaches, we're making the best predictions we can, and we don't know what's going to actually happen. And the teams aren't like broadcasting it always of what's happening. The players aren't always showing what they can do, especially against top talent. And some people break through, and it's the uncertainty, the stuff we got wrong going into the season, that shows itself early. And those are most likely the best pickups of the year, outside of the fact that you're going to have some handcuffs that get picked up here and there later in the season. But outside of that, if you spend earlier, you are in a better position and you get to get more out of them. Hopefully more wins too.
Yeah. Sorry, I was going to say, yeah, I mean, 100% on that, because a lot of times if you don't spend it then when there's that player that you want that is worth spending it on, you might be holding it on for nothing, and you can't carry your fab over to next year, generally speaking. So
yeah,
I spend it when you know you got it to spend.
My fab and my actual money.
Fair enough. Rule, no generational wealth in the Love family.
No. All right. The other piece is, like, it goes along with this as another consideration. If you're afraid of being left with not enough fab, remember that if your league allows it, which on Sleeper, I think it's a standard. I don't think there's a setting that you turn it on and off, but just check. And trading fab is something that I do a lot throughout the season. If I want to trade a good player and just get a chunk of fab because I had to make room, sometimes I make trades. I have an extra player. There's somebody worth fab that I can just trade for. a lot of times people are willing to even mediocre players because they're good enough that they would have to spend at least that on the waiver wire. So they get a certainty. They know exactly how much fab they're going to spend, and then they get that player. So you can also do like add-ins. You're close on a trade, throw me $20 in fab. Just add a little bit of extra fab to make it worth it. And then if you just collect these small amounts throughout the season, you replenish and you can go and get these guys and be ready for that handcuff late or those defenses that you want to make sure that you're good to go for the last few weeks of the season and into the playoffs, where you might want to just spend it there.
Yeah, that's a good call out. I think this next one that we're going to chat through, I think we've hit a couple of different times, and I feel like we might even slightly disagree on how we handle this situation. Around limiting how you handle handcuffs early. There is something to be said, though, to make sure you're preferring the upside folks over handcuffs. A lot of folks are out there, and there's always going to be hot names that come off the page, right? You got your Bayshall Tutons, you've got folks like that are like people that have a real pathway to playing time versus being just a backup. And those are the handcuffs I'd look to, generally speaking. Charbonnet's one. He's another, depending on how you feel about how often James Conner gets hurt. Trey Benson might be another. So look at how you handle those handcuffs and make sure that you are favoring folks that actually have a path to playing. Don't just handcuff to handcuff. You don't need to go grab. I can't even think of a popular handcuff. These like Tyler Algier is someone that I like because I have Bijan. But right now, everyone is looking at Bijan Robinson as the guy. So hopefully they don't use Algier as much this year. And if that's the case, he's not going to have a ton of playing.
Yeah, there's a few different handcuff tiers. Like there's the ones that can contribute now. Like you got your Montgomery, your Charbonnet that might be actually contributing now. And those ones I think are fine to grab, obviously, and have on your roster now because there's a huge amount of upside if something happens to the person in front of them. But there's other players that you look at and you're not even quite sure, or you feel like since they're the running back too, that they're going to take over. But we forget how nuanced the skill set is, where they might be a complementary running back, and the third string or fourth string running back might be the person that's better equipped to actually handle that. So then you're holding on to this thing forever, and it doesn't turn into anything when the moment hits, if it actually hits at all. So there's, in the early part of the season, I hate holding on to handcuffs unless I have a feeling like I want to see in the first week or so if they're actually going to contribute. I would drop Charbonnet myself if I don't see anything at all from him within the first couple of weeks, and it's like obviously not part of their game plan. At some point in the season, Walker will probably get hurt, and Charbonnet will be great. But I won't want to, in the beginning of the season, cycle through these players that have a way higher upside. And you can still get these handcuffs using the other strategies that we've talked about either throwing people on your IR and getting an extra player, rotating people throughout the weekend based on the time that they play, if you're allowed to drop. So you can get around a lot of this and get those handcuffs anyways without spending a lot if you have a little bit of luck and a lot of strategy.
Yeah, that's a good call out. But that serves into really being active in what you're watching and what's happening in the waiver wire. Beyond just watching that, there's a lot of things. And one last thing I know it's not on the list that I wanted to call out as a quick tip as you're setting your lineups every week, especially leading into week one, right? There's a lot of buzz from beat reporters. You're going to hear a lot of things about what's going on with depth charts and all that. So one thing to watch for during week one is check out things like actual snap percentages and stuff like that as you're looking into waiver wires after the week, like who's actually getting the playing time, who's out there on the field the most, who's got the most opportunity. And then last but not least, as you're setting your lineups for week one. So this is my extra credit one part two. Make sure, and this sounds silly and maybe it doesn't matter as much here early in the season, so maybe I'm talking about it way too early, but check the weather reports. It's going to impact your passing game. And for those of us that really care about our kickers, make sure you're paying attention to what's going on during the actual game playing time as you're leading into the week, because that can make some of your tiebreaker decisions for you.
Since you mentioned some bonuses, I like that a lot, and I think that should be something that we remind people about as the weather goes on, as the year and season goes on. Another piece here is make sure you're paying attention to the IRs when it comes to your players, if they're playing and there's somebody else going to come in and disrupt, and really try to make a prediction on how much they will mess it up. And if you can get out of something early, awesome. If somebody likes somebody, they're not thinking about the IR player that's coming back, or they don't think they're actually going to be a big impact, don't wait until it's too late, and don't be afraid to lose a couple weeks of production if your team can support it. If you get something in return that's way more valuable than you think you will later on. Now, I wouldn't do this for players like Chubb, for example, because I don't know if Mixon's going to play at all this year, and it might be dragged on. And the 2025 poor man's version of CMC from last year, and it might just keep getting dragged on. But don't. I also, when you're looking at the depth chart itself, it's another bonus one. Now the gears are turning. One thing we see all the time is people pull out really fast before the first week of the newer running backs because of where they're placed on the depth chart. Like Caleb Johnson is running back 3, I think. Like Bill Krosky is running back 4, which might be valid. I don't know. But then you've got Henderson as running back 3. Those are not all correct. I don't think any of those are correct exactly, right? They give the respect to the veteran and they put the rookie in the back, and then people get really, really nervous about these players when they shouldn't be at all. Caleb Johnson, maybe if you love him so much, you're probably a little wrong. But he could be something great, but he's probably not third on the depth chart. I don't think that you should consider him that. Henderson is sure as hell not third on the depth chart. That's insanity. So pay attention to those. Rookies get pushed down the depth chart. Don't be freaked out. Buy the value if you can, if people are freaked out.
Yeah, I'm seeing that. I saw Bill got put down to 3, and Austin Eckler is your RB1 out of the Commanders' backfield right now. And
he was at 4 before. He got bumped. He got a promotion to 3.
Oh, there you go. You got Grandpa running the show, so we'll see how much he can play. And I love me some Austin Eckler, don't get me wrong.
Yeah. How do you feel about missing your Chargers game tomorrow?
How do I feel about it? Because of my son's football game? Is that what we're
it's on the record. This is on the record.
Yeah. Well, this will be me during my son's game. People will think I'm recording video, but
yeah, you got to hold it up like, yeah. And then you got to call Hampton son when he scores a touchdown. Yeah, son. And then people will think, he'll be like, I'm on the sideline, Dad.
Yeah, no, it's not awesome, but that's okay. It is what it is. I will be wearing a Chargers jersey to my son's game, which my son did say he was hoping I would not do, but it's fine.
No, sacrifices have been made on both sides. All right, that's been your beginning of the season tips and tricks. If you have some other ones that always save you, throw them in the comments. I'd like to hear them. I'd like to learn from y'all too. Cool. It's good talking to you.
All right. See ya.